I think is one of the most popular genres on YouTube. That might be quite confusing, but let me explain. We often attribute action to Tom Cruise running across London rooftops, or Iron Man stopping that alien invasion. But what are the common attributes towards those two examples? They're spectacle. And spectacle is something that we do very well on YouTube. So if you're making high spectacle content, you're making an action movie. So what are again 3 common attributes in emotion, story, and rhythm with action? With emotion, one of the first words that comes to mind is aggression. Aggression is different to anger. It suggests combat. But often with action is crossing the threshold in very dangerous situations that you might potentially hesitate in. Crossing that threshold is bravery. But despite all of that, action still has some common elements with horror. Because of the unpredictability of it, there is also still a sense of panic. So in terms of action, how else could this inform the story? Action does suggest fighting, and so that means violence. Action also suggests, well, good guys versus bad guys. Action is also associated with challenges, or in this case, feats of strength. So is there something they've never been able to do before that they're using strength, emotionally or physically, to achieve? And then the last one, how does rhythm inform action? I think one of the most obvious ones is intensity. It's like the pacing of the cuts don't give an opportunity to have a break. It's constant. But when you're in the action, when the adrenaline's pumping, you tend to hyper-focus. Despite everything being fast, it all still kind of makes sense. So by being specific with your cuts can help give that focus. But I think the last element is the build. Since action is so unpredictable, you won't know when this ends. So you can have this ferocity for an extended period of time. But then you can keep on increasing the pace. The cuts can get faster and faster and faster until the final hit. So that's my initial association and brainstorm with action. But in order to teach you how to cut good action scenes, I'm first going to show you how to do a bad action scene, so you can see what not to do. This scene is known as the taken fence scene. As you can see, I've taken offense to this. This scene has a reputation on the internet for being shit. And it's even been memed. Don't believe me? At your next party, throw on the taken fence scene for 10 hours straight. Drinking excessively to it almost makes it good. Almost. Let's be honest, that scene is just plain bad. It's over-stuttery, it's overly complicated, and it doesn't have a flow. People have counted and there's over 17 shots in 4 seconds. The misconception of action scenes is that they must have fast cuts. But that's not the case. Action scenes must have motivated cuts. In most editing, not just action, the philosophy is if a character makes a new choice, you have to make a new cut. The reason why people do fast cuts in action scenes is because during a fight, you are making a million little choices at once. However, deciding to jump over a fence wasn't 17 little choices. It was one choice. Chopping one choice into 17 choices now makes the whole scene jittery and jarring. You can have a few clear shots of the action. Information is better than fast cuts. But in that example I just showed you is another secret: cutting on action. So when cutting on someone doing an action, it may seem obvious that you cut on the exact point, right? But let's see that. That felt weird, didn't it? Something felt wrong. The reason why it flows weird is because oddly, the shot isn't connected. So how do you connect it? What's interesting is when we see a new shot, it often takes us a brief amount of time to understand all of the new information in the shot. But that small amount of time is crucial in maintaining a flow. So if you do want to cut on the action and maintain flow, the second shot of the action should play a few frames earlier of the same action. So as you can see, his legs raise over the fence twice. It's kind of like a replay, but at normal speed, you don't notice it, and the shot flows significantly better. The sad fact is, you'll never be able to unsee this in action movies now. I'm sorry. And so, we've established that action scenes should have motivated cuts. Now, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. The best editors of action are conversational editors, because at the end of the day, a fight scene is just a conversation with weapons. Ang Lee, the director of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, said, "When people fight, I treat it like a conversation, like a verbal drama. There's a relationship, a development going on. There's conflict." And if you've ever watched a really good argument scene, let's say something by Aaron Sorkin, you'll notice that the power dynamic shifts back and forth throughout the scene. Action is the same way. An editor cutting action needs to have the emotional intelligence to spot the power dynamics shifting in a fight sequence. One character starts out winning, then they're losing. Now they're winning, but only just. A good action scene takes us on that roller coaster. As you cut an action scene, ask these questions. At the beginning of the scene, who is in power and who is not in power? At the end of the scene, who is in power and who is not in power? What are the stakes of the scene and how can I emphasize them? What choices do these characters make as they wrestle for power? And how can I include these choices as beats and micro beats? And then on top of that, as you examine each shot, you should ask this. Does the shot maintain geography? Does the shot set up or continue the stakes? What's the power dynamic of this shot? In this shot, who's in power, who's not in power? Who's vulnerable, who's got the advantage? In this shot, does this character get more powerful or less? Is this character making a choice in this shot? How can I highlight it? The most important thing about action is to show the power struggle and the exchange of power. You can show this through momentum, geography, and build-up. So let's see how I've used what is my understanding of action to help me inform these cuts. Okay, there's already a lot of kinetic action and energy there, especially with these close-up shots of the gun. If you're cutting for action, sometimes kinetic energy is a really valuable tool. So which shot can generate that action, that energy? So that's why when he lifts his gun for the first time, I chose a shot of the camera that's attached to the gun. And then I was quite specific with my cuts here with the rhythm. Like there was a clear intention between those shots. Here's we get to look at where he's shooting, and then we get to see another shot of him making the shot. I've actually repeated the same gunshot twice, but that repeat of the rhythm is quite effective. But also with that sense of aggression means that time kind of skips forward a little bit. So even though he's clearly getting up from this shot here, I kind of jump cut to him already aiming at the next target. In the actual footage, he had to walk down this entire pathway, but I didn't think that was that important. Let's aggressively get to the next part of the action. So I essentially hit a jump cut to get to the next part quickly. But also with action, you have to be very specific with your geography. That's why as we're moving into the next section of the course, I actually held onto this wide shot so you get a good sense of the direction of where he's going next. We specifically know what is happening at all times. This was just a good moment in a narrative because Logan struggled with that moment before. And so in story, for me, feats of strength, it was good just to focus on that beat that way. In one of my emotion choices, I chose bravery. And that actually is a sense of power. Someone who is a very powerful person is a conductor of music because they are commanding an entire orchestra. I sometimes like to follow that same philosophy. Whoever is the most powerful is also in charge of the music. So that is why on what is a very inconsequential movement, just him landing on the ground, that moment also now commands a new segment of music. So in this context, I like to see it as Logan as the conductor. A whole new sequence of music is motivated just by that movement. And I do it again. As he starts a whole new action, the music changes one more time. And again. As he's going down his obstacle course, he's literally conducting the music. But alongside that, the rhythm has this consistency towards it that is also still intense. The majority of these cuts have this average rhythm. 1 second and 22 frames. This is also 1 second and 22 frames. This one is 1 second and 13 frames. This one is 1 second and 22 frames again. This one is 2 seconds. There is a consistent pacing in these cuts, and it's them complementing with each other. But there's also quite a short length in these cuts, and so there still has that intensity because we're having to reevaluate the new shot consistently. And then of course, here's Logan climbing over a fence. See, Taken Free, this is how you make it coherent. We actually see what he's doing. We see each decision that he's making, and it's not over-edited. Come on, Taken Free, you're better than this. Sorry, I got a little bit carried away there. But of course, a lot of action sequences do work towards a climax, and so you have to start building towards that. So as he's displayed these feats of strength climbing this tower, I then break the rhythm to a different pacing to then tell you that something new is about to happen. Change.
Let's see what you got.
So as you can see there, that was an establishing shot of the new environment. Again, coming back to specific cuts.
Let's see what you got. You see your target up there?
Establishing shots. Rhythm's broken. And then... oh, beautiful. There was a variety of cuts there in the rhythm. There was a moment when the cut slowed down really drastically. You then begin to anticipate what's happening. There's your sense of build. To then deliver on that build, the cuts then go extremely fast. So then as he shoots the gun, it's a very satisfying moment done through the rhythm. By having a slow moment and then contrasting it with intensity is what makes that satisfying. And that intensity was also violent and aggressive. I'm still using emotion and story in this. Editing action isn't just putting drums under everything and calling it a day. You gotta be sure that you're specific, be focusing on feats of strength in your story, and having a sense of aggression as well. So if you are cutting for action, one of the things you need to make sure to do is hyper-focus on what the objective is. In the same way with horror, is someone trying to escape? Is someone trying to hide? If it's a destination or an object or a tool that they're trying to get, how can you have that relationship in the action? So one of the main rules in action, whether you're trying to get to an objective, you're trying to complete a challenge, or you're trying to overcome something, this is when the conversational editing is the most important. Make sure each shot does a good job in raising questions, and for the next shot to be the response. Have them talk to each other. No, actually, have them argue with each other. But also, it can be quite easy to forget the intent of the action scene. So make sure you do throw in reminders of why they're fighting. Are they racing to get to a destination? Make sure you cut to where they're racing to. Kuleshov effect the fuck out of that destination. If it's a heated argument, consider who's the one in power and ensure they're the ones who have the most screen time. More screen time gives them that power. The other one who doesn't makes them more vulnerable and weak. That's how you can create a power dynamic. So most action scenes have a climax? How can you build towards that? Giving the audience a sense of anticipation of when the climax is really important. So you can bring in that suggestion by the cuts potentially getting faster. You can have the music be swelling up. Cut to more close-ups of the destination or the object that they're trying to get to. Tell us that the climax is coming, make us anticipate it, and let us be excited and then reward us with the result.